Okay, this video exists because of a guy by the name of Malcolm. A little while ago, I did a video on the War of the Worlds graphic novel by Chris Mould, and a number of people commented on it. Thank you, everyone. And a guy by the name of Malcolm, and he mentioned that still the best, follow-on, add-on to War of the Worlds was the one published by Osprey, which I'd never heard of, but a quick Google found me this: War of the Worlds, the Anglo-Martian War of 1895. All right, and I'm very grateful to Malcolm. Thank you, Malcolm, if you're watching this, because I didn't know of this, and I'm blooming glad I got it. So I thought today we'll go through it. If you're a fan of the novel or the films, yeah, let's have a look, and this might whet your appetite as well. All right. So, War of the Worlds by Mike Bronton. All right. He's the author, but it's not just text. There are illustrations. Let's go to the very beginning. Yeah, here we go. Mike Brunton, born in Yorkshire, worked on everything from miniatures, war games and board games to BAFTA award-winning computer games. Now a freelance writer and games designer. Illustrator, Alan Lathwell, freelance illustrator based in the UK, specialises in fantasy art and has a passion for Celtic and Norse mythology, which began at an early age. So, all right by me. So yeah, here we go then. By Mike Brunton, illustrations by Alan Lathwell. And I thought what we'll do is I'll just take you through some of it and point some things out that I thought was of interest. And right from the get-go, what's interesting is in this introduction, it says about how H.G. Wells was just one of the war correspondents during the war, and after the war was later criticised for being pro-Martian by having a view that the Martians were unbeatable. What follows is a explanation of the state of Britain, its place in the world prior to the landings, and what Mike does here is he definitively puts dates on things, sizes of things, etc., etc. And yeah, according to this, it's the summer of 1895. And in this part of the book, we're introduced to the real world politicians, and we see what was happening, the bigger picture, because of course, the novel is primarily from the point of view of the narrator. We don't get any idea of what else is happening in Britain at the same time. Well, what we find out in this book is the Prime Minister, Lord Salisbury, the decisions he had made once word got to London of what was happening down in Woking. Immediately, the royal family was moved to Balmoral, and they were guarded there by a battalion of infantry and artillery. London and the home counties, when it all started going to pot, were put under martial law. And if the war had continued, that would have extended out to Sussex, Hampshire, and Kent. The government were evacuated from London up to Oxford. Okay, all the way through here, we are learning about the state of the army and navy at that time, the weapons that were used at that time. We go through all that, and it brings us to the Martians themselves. And I like the idea that the suggestion that the Martians were so loathsome to man that the reason they were so loathsome to man was that they were triggering a racial memory. A thought was given that the Martians had actually arrived before. We learn in this part of the book that no Martian was ever captured alive, and when they did find the dead ones, they were in an advanced state of decomposition. I like about here, it says about how the appearance of a Martian was like a plucked pheasant that's been hung too long. And there's lots of talk also about the um, the variations there were in Martians. Some had 4 tentacles, some had 9 tentacles. Some tentacles ended with 2 fingers, some ended with 6. Some of the mouths of the Martians had bony ridges, some of them had fangs. And thought was given that they used thought. They had conscious control over their forms to create a body to adapt to its surroundings. A Martian that was found in a fighting machine was different to that found in a handling machine. And there is also talk in here about how they think that they communicated via telepathy. The alu alu of the book, or the oola oola of the Jeff Wayne version, wasn't them communicating. It was a victory roar. It wasn't communication. All right. Um, and also they talk about this, the very often overlooked human-like creatures that were found inside the cylinders that were brought from Mars. These are the servitors. They were food creatures. They were rations for the Martians on their trip across the million miles of space. When we This is very good. I mean, it's very unlikely that you had propaganda posters put up in the matter of days that the war took place, but it's all good fun. Um, yeah, when we get here, we get to the fighting machines, and yeah, we get a definitive height. According to Mike, they are 135 feet tall, could sprint at 50 miles per hour. Um, and that's pointed out in the book that at that time, the only thing that was faster than that were the trains. And it says about how the uh, the the bodies of the fighting machines were a ceramic metallic compound which resembled skin or bark close up. It said about how they had a single viewing port with a heat ray on one side and the black smoke generator on the other side. What I thought was really neat was it says how they had trouble shooting upwards. They could shoot forwards and they could shoot down, but they couldn't shoot upwards except by leaning backwards precariously. And actually, the spotters in the observation balloons were really quite safe. It also talks about, in this part here, about how upon examining the fighter machines after the war, the scientists were baffled by the heat ray. But we now know. I didn't say that this book is written in current times looking back. And what it's saying here is the scientists of 1895 were puzzled by the heat ray, but we now, or they in this book, know that it was actually a maser, similar to a laser, but instead of light amplification, it's microwave amplification. Okay. And it also says that the black smoke that they fired was weaponized carbon, not smoke at all, but powdered carbon nanotubes. I also like the fact that when the scientists were examining the inside of a fighter machine, they were baffled by the absence of a power source. They could find no engine. But the fact that people who were in one of the fighter machines for some time got sunburn points at low level radiation. The fighting machines were actually nuclear powered. Here we got talk of the handling machines. It says that they stood on 6 legs and were around 80 foot tall to the top of the operator's cabin. That seems a bit too tall for me, but what the hey. Here we go. This is talk about the cylinders and the launch cannon. And again, we get specific size this time because H.G. Wells could be vague regarding things like that. The cylinders were 100 foot in diameter and 260 foot long. And you have this fantastic illustration showing you how the cylinders were fired. They were put in a barrel which went up the side of Olympus Mons, the tallest mountain on Mars. In fact, it's so tall that it actually goes through the atmosphere. It goes out into space. So, when a cylinder is fired, by the time it leaves the barrel, it hasn't got to go through the atmosphere of Mars. It's already in space. Round about here, it's going on about how impressive it was, how they could accurately fire the cylinders across at least 34 million miles and hit a small island on Earth precisely. It was saying about how the first cylinder landed on Horsell Common in Woking, the next one landed nearby, and then further subsequent landings were further and further away, with the final ones landed in central London itself, which were battle reinforcements. It points out that there was never found any naval equipment or vessels taken by the Martians, but it's also pointing out that the English Channel was relatively shallow, and that a tripod walking across the English Channel would have only been fully submerged for a short while. Sorry, I got distracted then. So again, more publicity, posters, brilliant stuff. And then from here about onwards, we get the first landing on Horsell Common, but taken from other points of view, and discussing what the people. I mean, look at that, it's brilliant. And what those in charge did, what army units were used, and how they were used. There's the cavalry charge. The Brookwood landings, that's the mosque in Woking. I've been there. I refer you back to my War of the Worlds walk around Woking. I didn't go right up to it. I thought that might have been a bit disrespectful, but yeah, been there. It's still there. This is showing you the martial law that was taking place. The Battle of Chertsey, and then here, HMS Revenge. This section tells how it was grounded in the Thames and was used as a gun platform for shooting at the approaching fighting machines. Again, martial law. Yeah, the falling of Westminster. It describes that very well, and about the destruction of Westminster and the Big Ben bell plummeting to the ground. Here's all about the Thunder Child, of course. There it is. Pause a moment so you can take that in. I do like this design of the tripods. Some are better than others. I like this. It's got a bit of a nod with the cowl to the Spielberg version, hasn't it? But no, it's nice. It's good. And then let me just go forward to here. The aftermath. It starts talking about the main problem was the clearing away of the human dead, and in this section, history starts to divert. It says about how the British Army was forever changed. They started to use new weapons such as the Maxim pom-pom guns, flame projectors and portable mortars. And the British Army had new attitudes. It says just here about how the Boers in South Africa were shocked to find the British no longer fought like gentlemen. And down here, we find out about the troglodytes, the people, much like the artillerymen, who decided they were going to go underground and live underground. And after the war, they were, coaxed out, come on out. But they didn't believe them. They thought it was all a ruse, and that the humans telling them to come out were in league with the Martians, and they might still be down there now. Over here, we've got a thing about how after the war, other countries wanted to buy the Martian machinery. But the British government decided, no, this was a British problem solved by us. we're keeping everything. One heat ray did go missing, and actually went to Berlin, where it was studied by the German High Command. But their engineers never understood the heat ray, much to the frustration of the German army throughout World War One and World War Two. All right. Um, and then this, I think, Mike Brunton, is a stroke of genius. He's tying together two science fiction worlds, because he talks about the lost cylinder of Knightsbridge, and it said the fate of the missing Martian cylinder remained a mystery until 1958, when workmen unearthed some metal fragments in Knightsbridge. The work was a planned extension to the London Underground station at Hobbs Lane, where new platforms and an underground booking hall were needed. At first, the wreckage was thought to be an unexploded German V2, but there was far too much material. When the Royal Engineers disposal team realised what they had really found, a further digging work in the area was handed over to a team at University College. Does that remind you of anything? If it doesn't, I'll just point out that basically is the plot to Quatermass and the Pit, which indeed had a cylinder being discovered. It was thought to be a bomb. Then they find out it's actually a spaceship from Mars. A brilliant idea to actually to dovetail those two tales into one. And it says here, almost as soon as the station was finished, plans were being made to close it. It was unpopular with staff and passengers alike because of the Martian connection. We've got here about the Tunguska, I can never say it, Tunguska explosion in Siberia in 1908, and how immediately people thought, oh my God, the Martians are back. But it wasn't. And then, yeah, where are the Martians now? It says, as human-built robots now insolently trundle across the surface of Mars, perhaps we shall wake the Martians. Excuse me. Or perhaps we shall discover a dead race, struck down by the psychic equivalent of a smallpox-riddled blanket. And then it ends with a couple of appendixes. This is about Colonel Sebastian Moran, retired, single-handedly assassinating a Martian, the biggest big game that he had ever bagged. And then Winston Churchill, what Winston Churchill was up to as a young man. He reckons he was at Horsell Common, but afterwards people thought this was it was you know, an elaboration, maybe made up to you know, boost his reputation. And that's where the book ends. And really good fun and very, very interesting. Thank you, Malcolm, again for putting me onto this. It's a stonking good read, and I really, really did enjoy it. So yeah, if you're a fan of the original, I urge you to seek it on out.